Okay. Let's talk about Quilt Market. Ooh, so I'm sorry that it is now November 28th, exactly 1 month since all my appointments at Quilt Market, and I'm just now giving you an update. The day after I got back from Quilt Market on Halloween, two of our very good friends arrived and stayed with us for 2 weeks, which meant for 2 weeks I was pretty wrapped up in the moment, hanging out with them, relaxing after the excitement of Quilt Market, and then after they left, catching up with everything going into Thanksgiving. You guys know how busyness works, so I'm sorry, but I'm so excited to finally update you. Okay, so first of all, Quilt Market was excellent. I got a fabric deal. I'll be announcing with whom pretty soon. It's not that I'm not allowed to say. They said I should be strategic with when I let you guys know, and I don't fully know what that means, so I'm not going to say it yet. But I did get a fabric deal. It's with the company that I had kind of set out as my number one, and I'm very, very excited. So Quilt Market was a huge success. Not only did I get a fabric deal, which I didn't get while I was there, by the way. It was 2 days after I got back, but I also got to meet so many cool creative people. I got to meet all the designers that I've wanted to meet for a long time. And it sort of made Quilt Market feel like camp, like summer camp, because I knew everybody by the end and didn't want to say goodbye and when are we going to see each other again and all of that. So it was a great time. It was very exciting. But what I would like to do is I have some questions from you guys that are all ready to go. And I've also put together a little bit of a timeline for you. I think it would be helpful for you to get an understanding of what kind of what the road looked like to getting to Quilt Market for me and all the steps that I took to get there. So pull up the timeline here. Starting back in September 21st of 2016, I started my first 100-day drawing challenge. So I had been working for a company doing graphic design work, very technical work, and I wasn't happy. I hated that I was in a creative industry and not creating anything. And so in my spare time outside of my day job, I started this 100-day project. And I'll link to it below if you want to actually look at the project and see how I set it up. I did it myself through Skillshare. It wasn't a big group effort. It was just me saying I was going to do this. And the main goal was just so that I could well, I had a few goals actually. One was I just wanted to get more comfortable in my sketchbook. I didn't want art to be scary anymore. I wanted to become a pattern designer, and I knew that this would take me closer to that dream, and it would just make me feel like I was being creative again. And so that's why I set out to do it. A few days into that, on September 25th, I drew my first botanical floral, and I really enjoyed it. I liked the end product, which was the first time since starting the drawing challenge that I drew something I actually liked, and so it seems like a big day for me. October 26th, I bring a drawing into Illustrator. So this was the first time that I actually took one of my drawings and brought them into Illustrator to use. And we'll talk about this later, but this isn't my first time using Illustrator. I had used Illustrator a lot before then, but it was my first time during this particular challenge when I took one of my drawings into the software and decided to try and bring my drawing to life. In December of 2016, I was laid off from my job. So my job that I had been very much complaining about, but still needed to pay the bills, could no longer afford to pay me, and so they let me go. And this was right before we moved to Phoenix, which happened in January. And so I was kind of freaking out. It was very stressful, and any energy that I had been putting towards my 100-day challenge, although I was still drawing, I was really more focused on getting another job and the big move coming up. Everything was very scary up until this point. So we move in January, and on January 30th, I start a new job, and it's another graphic design job. This one is not like the one I had had before, but it was still very much like classic graphic design stuff. And less than a month later, on February 27th, I was fired from that job. I had never been fired before, and up until that point had held being fired in my head as one of the scariest things that can happen to you. I was like, it feels like your livelihood is at stake, the floors open up beneath you. I was terrified of it. The very next day after being fired, I was the happiest I had been since we moved to Phoenix. I didn't know what was coming next, but I just felt so light. And I kind of had a choice to make here, because up until that point, I had been asking, I just kept saying, if only I had the time and energy to work on this stuff that I want to be working on. And then the universe gave it to me. I got let go from my job and I had tons of time and energy. And so I kind of figured, okay, I can either get another traditional graphic design job, or I can just go for it. And I decided to just go for it. So pretty big day. April 1st, I published my second Skillshare class. It does really well. It kind of enforces the decision that I made, and I decide, okay, I can keep doing this. I can figure out how to do it. And the very next day, on April 2nd, I start my second 100-day drawing challenge. And this was with Elle, Luna, and Lindsay Jean Thompson. And some of you, I know that we follow each other on Instagram, you guys did this too. So a lot of people played a part in this 100-day challenge. And this one, instead of just doing drawings for 100 days, I wanted to make illustrations. So I wanted to draw something and then bring it into the computer and render it, and do that for 100 days straight. And it was really important for me because this second 100-day drawing challenge took everything I had like kind of built up in the first one and really helped me figure out my style. I got more comfortable with my workflow. I got better with my color making decisions. So it was really important for me to have another consecutive day challenge to kind of push me there. May 1st, I finished my first mini collection. Up until that point, I had been designing patterns and illustrations as one-offs, just sort of as they came to my brain, getting the process down. And I took one of Bonnie Christine's workshops where she had set some deadlines for collections. And I work really well with deadlines set by other people. And so I sat down and I banged out my first mini collection. And I realized a few things. That first of all, it was really difficult. I kind of liked it. It was a lot of work, and I had a lot to learn to keep going and to work in to make a full collection. A little, like 2 months later, the end of June 29th, I am challenged to go to Quilt Market. So up until this point, I had been making a lot of illustrations and teaching on Skillshare, and my following was starting to grow because of the 100-day challenge and the exposure that brought me. And it was nice because I could go to my Instagram feed and I could start to see that my style was there, that there was something that was uniting all of my work together. And at the end of June is when I was challenged to go to Quilt Market. So even though I didn't think I was ready, like I've told you in past videos, I took the challenge and decided, okay, I'll go. The registration for Quilt Market didn't open up until August or the end of July, and so on August 9th I registered for Quilt Market and I booked my trip. And later in the month, on August 22nd, my credentials arrived. So it was really exciting when I got the badge in the mail and all the official paperwork. On September 21st, I reached out to my first company for a meeting, and that was with Art Gallery Fabrics, and I got an appointment with them. On September 29th, I reached out to Wyndham, and on October 4th, I reached out to Andover and Moda. So those were the 4 companies that I wanted to meet with at Market. Whew, so that's in October, and October 13th, I send everything off to the printer and do a collective exhale, because it was crazy to me that I was actually able to do that much work and get it done well in that amount of time. And then on October 26th, I flew to Houston. So that's kind of the timeline of how I got here. I think that first 100-day drawing challenge is really what, to me, I can tell that's where this all began, because I was just so beside myself. I was doing creative work, but not really proud to show it to anyone. Like, I was proud of what I was doing, but it didn't feel like me. And so sitting down and doing that work only for me without anybody else telling me to or asking me to or depending on me really was a big deal for me. But I do want to point out that this is pretty quick. I did my first drawing challenge last September, and this October I got that fabric deal. Well, technically it was November 1st, so this November. And I don't want you to be discouraged and think, well, I've been doing this for over a year and I don't have a fabric deal. And so I want to talk about some of the seeds that I had planted already before September 21st. One were those technical Adobe skills. I already knew how to use Photoshop and Illustrator, not everything in it, and that doesn't mean I was proficient at pattern making, but I already was really comfortable in those programs, and so that really wasn't a learning curve for me. At that point, I had a design background. Like I said, I had been working as a graphic designer, and so I was already pretty familiar with the world of graphic design and different styles and what I liked and what I didn't like. And then I had also already started my blog, and so my blog started in 2015. So even though I had only been doing this for less than a year when I went to go to Quilt Market, I already had some things going for me. When I went to register for Quilt Market, I could point to my blog, and I had this network of designers, and so I already had some stuff going for me. But let's get to your questions that you asked. Josie asks, what is Quilt Market like and what do you do there? This is a great question. Before I went, I didn't really consider what I would be doing there because I was just so focused on, oh, I go there to get appointments and get a fabric deal. But it's a long time. So Quilt Market, and I hope if you don't know what Quilt Market is at all, go back and watch my Quilt Market intro video because I kind of go over the basics there. But Quilt Market is divided into two parts. So on one part you have this quiet area where there's all these quilts hanging, and then in this other area you have all the booths that people have set up. So this is fabric companies and manufacturers, you have mills, you have people who sell notions like buttons and zippers and patches, you've got designers, you have quilt shops, you've got people who sell things like stain removers and massagers and ironing boards and all of this stuff. So they're all on one side. And basically what you do if you don't have appointments is you just walk up and down and you say hi to people and you see what they're selling and what they're doing. And then on the other side where all the quilts are, which was very calming for me because it was really quiet over there, they just have all of these gorgeous quilts from all over hung up, showcasing what people have been doing. And so what you do there is you network. You see what's coming down the fabric pipeline, and you meet people who are doing things, and you get all excited about what's going on. Josie also asked, how did you go about getting meetings set up? So what I did was I Googled, when I researched the companies I wanted to work for, which was basically just looking up fabric companies and seeing what designers were designing for them and what designers I liked and who I wanted to work with and all of that. And most of the websites, all the websites had at least a general contact number. And I went for the phone because I figured a lot of people would be more comfortable emailing, and so I wanted to kind of stand out a little bit more by being willing to call them and talk to them on the phone. So what I did is I typed up a little script that said something, let's see, I might even still have it on here because I had it on my computer. Here it is. Hi there, my name's Dylan and I'm a surface pattern designer who will be attending Quilt Market for the first time this fall. I'm looking to set up an appointment to go over my portfolio to see if my designs would be a good fit with fill in the blank. And then I would say, who can I talk to? Or can I talk to somebody who has something to do with that? And usually the receptionist didn't know who to send me to, so I'd go to sales or marketing, and then I'd say my speech over and over until finally I would get sent to the voicemail that I needed. And I would say, I think for all 4 appointments, I called all of them and left voicemails, and then I either ended up speaking with someone on the phone who gave me an email address, or someone would email me after I called them to tell me that to handle things through email. So even though I called, I ended up setting up things through email. So just so you know. And basically what I would do is, I knew that companies, they don't just want to see a sample of my work, they kind of want to get a snapshot of who I am and where I'm coming from. And I didn't have, right now I have about 1,800 followers on Instagram, but when I reached out I had about 1,200. And so I knew I wasn't a heavy hitter. I'm not an Instagram influencer. I haven't worked with a lot of brands, so I kind of knew I was a baby stepping into this. And so I stayed very professional. I still had my, my personality was in there, but I just tried to stay straight to the point because these people are busy and they're taking their time to look over your stuff. And so in my email, I would just say, thank you so much for taking the time to look at this. I've been a designer for this long, I have this many Instagram followers, I have this many Skillshare students, I hope to do X, Y, and Z in the industry, here's some of my work that you can look at. And this was kind of hard to maneuver because I was developing the work as I was reaching out to these people. So when I had to show them my work, I really didn't have a nice cohesive portfolio to show them. Instead, I would send them, I sent over a few JPEGs of stuff that I was working on. And in all cases, that was okay because they ended up printing, I think one company said they printed stuff out from my Instagram and others printed stuff out from my email. And it was enough to get my foot in the door and get the appointment. And so that's what I did there to get the appointments. Anne asks, how did you put together your first collections? I'm not very disciplined and just make one-offs. So I was making a lot of one-offs as well. It wasn't until my first mini collection back in, what was that, May? It was May 1st. That was my first time working in a collection like that. And for me, I think the thing that's nice is with a pattern, you can be inspired by one thing. So maybe a flower or an idea. But with a collection, you really want something that you're so interested in that you want to climb into it, because you really need to be able to explore a theme or a story or something that will be able to give you enough rich ideas for a whole collection. If I just think, oh, flower bouquets, then I'm able to come up with a few patterns here and there. But when I came up with my circus collection, for example, I knew the theme of a circus was a big thing for me to dig into and to pick patterns out of. I knew I could envision a lot of like stripes and what is the argyle, like the diamond patterns for like jesters and stuff. And so I just knew that there were a lot of visuals for me to work with there. So, and my advice to you when you're designing collections is to pick a theme or a story or a character that interests you further than just one pattern, something that you think you can dig into. Anne also asks why Quilt Market, and is the end goal to create fabrics that go into making quilts, or will your fabrics be available for a broad range of products? This is a good question. I picked Quilt Market really because Bonnie Christine that was sort of her journey, and so I was able to follow that path a little bit. Also, I can't think of another time when all of those companies get together like that, when all the fabric manufacturers are together in one room. So it seemed like a good time to take advantage of everybody being in one place. I did pitch the fabrics to them with quilts in mind. However, these fabrics aren't going to only be used for quilts. So even though that's kind of how I pitched them to them and kind of how I framed my whole visit with them, I also told them that I'm interested in making bags and, you know, this could work for children's clothes or what have you. So while it was for quilts, my fabrics will be available for anything you want to make them with. If you aren't going to Quilt Market and you're going to reach out to art directors that work at these fabric companies separately from Quilt Market, then don't feel the need to just center things around quilts. I think quilts are really important because they're so big in the fabric industry. They mean a lot and they're so special. So I wouldn't cut that out, but if you're not into quilts, don't worry, like there are other things that you can do. Okay, Erin says, tell us more about the drawing challenge that pushed you to this fantastic place. So like I said, I linked to the first one I did below, and basically what I did is I took it very seriously because I know for myself when I set goals that are only for me, so nobody else is giving me deadlines or accountability, so think exercising, weight loss, all of those types of getting more organized, all of those types of goals, I have failed at in the past because I didn't have a way to make it seem real to me, like I was able to break my own rules sort of thing. So I took it very seriously and I set up, and if you go to the link you'll see this. Sorry, my nose is really itchy, that's why I keep doing that. If you go to the project, you'll see that I set up some very specific parameters. So I set up when I was going to sketch, why I was doing it, what I would hope to get out of it, what the rewards were going to be, how I was going to hold myself accountable. And since I set it up that way, it felt really real to me. And I just knew that I didn't want it to be another thing that I just kind of let go by the wayside. I didn't want to start and then 3 days in throw it away. And so 100 days seemed doable. It wasn't as big as a full year, but it was big enough to be substantial. And I basically just each day would find an image. I did draw from images because I knew that that would make it easier for me to sit down and do it if I was actually finding something to draw from instead of putting the pressure to draw from my imagination or something like that. And yeah, I just started from there. I would draw for at least 20 minutes. I'd set a timer. And there were even nights that we had friends over and they didn't leave until really late, and I realized I hadn't drawn yet. And so after my boyfriend went to bed, there's one time I can picture vividly. I was standing in the kitchen. I didn't even turn the kitchen light on. We had our little night light on because I was so annoyed that I had to stay up and draw. But I set a timer on the stove timer, and I stood there and I drew for 20 minutes. And I didn't draw anything great, but I still did it. And so I really, really recommend it. If you find yourself feeling resistance towards making art, or you're having a hard time finding your style, or really I think anyone can benefit from doing a consecutive day project like that and taking it seriously, because it guarantees that you're going to make a lot of work, and when you make a lot of work, that gives you time to work past the crappy work and get to the good work. And so I think it's really important. Corey said, how did you go about registering for Quilt Market? It was my understanding you had to already be in the industry. So there are two types of badges you can get. There's like one main one, and then there's the industry professional, which is what I went for. And basically what they do is they list 5 or 6 different credentials that you can have to get there, and you need to provide 2 of them. And so in my case, I gave them the URL to my blog. They said it needs to be a unique domain name, so it can't be dylannm.squarespace.com or dylannm.wix.com or a Tumblr page or a Pinterest, because that's not my website. They wanted to see a unique domain name. And then I also gave them the tax ID number for my LLC. So those were the 2 pieces of credentials I needed to show that I was a real designer and I was, an industry professional. And then Corey asked, when trying to make appointments with art directors, did you email or call? Both. I started by calling, and then I ended up securing all the appointments by email, which was great because then I had everything in writing and could remember and reference when the appointments were and knew that I had everything down correctly. So those are all your questions and my little timeline and my update from Quilt Market. I don't know if I have anything else to share. It really has been, it was such a blur. When I got there, I was really unhappy. My hotel room was, I don't want to call it crappy because it was sweet, but it was not a great hotel, and I was all by myself, didn't have a car, and so I didn't have any, and so I just felt really lost. And when I got to Quilt Market, it was so big, and I didn't want to have to talk to people and shake their hands and tell them my name and get out my portfolio. It was really, really scary, but I'm so proud of myself for pushing past that, going to those appointments and being sure of myself, not apologizing for myself, but also not being cocky, showing them what I was about and asking for what I wanted. Because now, obviously, it paid off. And for those of you that are interested in what happens next, right now I'm working with the art director of the company, and we will be figuring out which direction to move in next. I presented them with all 3 of my collections, but we still get to decide which collection or if I want to develop something new, so that's where we are there. But I'm sorry again for the delay in the video. I hope the update was worth it, just hearing that it all went well. It was really exciting. I got to meet, so one of my favorite designers is Heather Ross, and not only did I get to meet her, but she looked through my book and she loved my work, which is the biggest compliment when your hero loves your own work and stuff. And so it was really exciting. So if you have any further questions, please drop them below. I'll keep answering them for as long as you have them. And also, last thing, I did open my Society 6 shop. Your support has been amazing. There have been a lot of sales already, but there is a sale going on at Society 6 right now, and they have sales often. So please check out the link below if you're interested in buying any of my florals to have in your house. Okay, bye guys.